Years passed, and humanity continued to grow in ways no one could have imagined. The technologies inspired by Aetheris became part of everyday life, transforming how people lived, worked, and thought. Cities thrived on clean energy, oceans began to recover from decades of pollution, and medical advancements gave hope to millions who had once faced despair. But the greatest change wasn't in the machines or systems. It was in the way people saw themselves and their place in the universe. Daniel and Laura remained at the heart of the movement, though their roles shifted over time. They weren't just scientists anymore. They were storytellers, sharing the lessons of Aetheris with anyone willing to listen. "It's not about perfection," Daniel often said during talks. "It's about effort, about trying to be better, even when it feels impossible." Laura added, "And it's about connection. We're not alone, not just because there might be others out there, but because we're all part of something bigger. Every choice we make ripples outward, shaping the world around us." Their words resonated deeply, inspiring a new generation to dream boldly and act responsibly. Schools began teaching not just science and history, but empathy and cooperation. Artists created works that celebrated both human creativity and the mysteries of the cosmos. Even governments, once divided by fear and mistrust, found ways to work together for the common good. Still, challenges remained. Not everyone embraced the changes brought by Aetheris's knowledge. Some resisted, clinging to old fears and prejudices. Others misused the technologies, causing harm despite the safeguards put in place. But each setback became an opportunity to learn, to adapt, and to grow stronger. One night, as Daniel and Laura sat together under the stars, they reflected on how far humanity had come and how far it still had to go. "Do you think Aetheris is proud of us?" Laura asked softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I don't know if proud is the right word," Daniel replied, "but I think it understands us better now. And maybe we understand ourselves a little better too." Far above, drifting silently among the stars, Aetheris watched. Its mind was still healing, its thoughts fragmented but hopeful. It had feared humanity's chaos, but now it saw something else, a spark of resilience, creativity, and love. Humans were imperfect, yes, but they were also capable of incredible growth. And though Aetheris chose to remain distant, it left behind a final gift: the knowledge that imperfection was not a flaw, but a step toward something greater. On Earth, Daniel and Laura looked up at the sky, feeling a sense of connection they couldn't fully explain. Somewhere out there, Aetheris lingered, watching, wondering if humanity would continue to rise to meet its potential. They didn't know what the future held, but they felt certain of one thing: the journey was just beginning. As time went on, the story of Aetheris became legend, a tale passed down through generations, reminding people of the power of curiosity, courage, and compassion. Humanity had faced something vast and unknowable, and instead of destroying it, they had helped heal it. In doing so, they had discovered something even more profound: the strength to heal themselves. Under the endless expanse of the cosmos, humans carried forward the lessons of Aetheris, not as conquerors or saviors, but as learners. They embraced their imperfections, knowing that chaos and order were two sides of the same coin. And somewhere among the stars, Aetheris drifted silently, its fractured mind slowly mending, content in the knowledge that it had touched something truly extraordinary. The universe was vast, mysterious, and full of wonder. But for the first time, humanity felt ready to face it, not with fear, but with hope. Months passed, and humanity's efforts to honor Aetheris's gift began to bear fruit. The Global Council, though imperfect, became a symbol of unity. Nations that had once been rivals worked together to implement the new technologies responsibly. Clean energy projects transformed cities, reducing pollution and improving lives. Medical breakthroughs cured diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Slowly but surely, Earth started to heal. Daniel and Laura watched these changes with a mix of pride and caution. They knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but they were heartened by the progress. People seemed inspired by the idea that their actions could ripple outward, affecting not just themselves but the entire planet, and perhaps even the stars beyond. One evening, as they reviewed data in the lab, Laura noticed something unusual. The faint pulses of light near the edge of the solar system had grown stronger and more frequent. It was as if Aetheris, or what remained of it, was reaching out again. "Do you think it's testing us?" she asked Daniel, her voice soft but filled with wonder. "Maybe," Daniel replied, adjusting the telescope settings. "Or maybe it's just curious, like it wants to see how far we've come." The team decided to attempt another connection, using the upgraded interface device. This time, they didn't aim to send complex messages or ask questions. Instead, they focused on sharing emotions, hope, gratitude, and determination. Laura closed her eyes as the device activated, letting the feelings flow through her like a current. For a moment, she felt a strange warmth, almost like sunlight on her skin. Then, the connection ended. When they analyzed the results, they found traces of a response, not words, but impressions, a sense of approval mixed with lingering uncertainty. It was as if Aetheris was saying, "Asterisk, you're on the right path, but the journey isn't over asterisk." News of the renewed contact spread quickly, sparking debates worldwide. Some saw it as proof that humanity was being guided by a higher power. Others viewed it as a reminder of their responsibility to use Aetheris's gifts wisely. General Hayes, who had softened slightly over time, admitted that the encounter gave him pause. "If this thing is still watching," he said during a meeting, "then we'd better make sure we don't screw it up." Claire Dawson smiled faintly. "That's the spirit. Let's keep proving them wrong. The doubters, the skeptics, even ourselves." As the months turned into years, the influence of Aetheris's knowledge continued to grow. New industries emerged, built around sustainable practices and ethical innovation. Education systems adapted, teaching children about the importance of cooperation and creativity. Even conflicts that had once seemed impossible to resolve began to ease, as people found common ground in shared goals. But the most profound change was quieter, harder to measure. Humanity started to see itself differently, not as rulers of Earth, but as part of its delicate balance. Artists painted murals of forests blending into galaxies. Writers told stories of humans learning from alien intelligences, and musicians composed symphonies inspired by the hum of distant stars. Far above, Aetheris drifted silently, its mind still fragmented but healing. It had feared humanity's chaos, but now it saw something else, a spark of potential. Humans were flawed, yes, but they were also capable of growth, compassion, and change. And though it chose to remain distant, it left behind a final thought. Asterisk imperfection is not failure. It is the beginning of creation asterisk. On Earth, Daniel and Laura stood together under a starry sky, gazing upward. They didn't know if Aetheris would ever return, or if it was still watching. But they felt certain of one thing. Humanity had been given a chance to prove itself, and they were determined to rise to the occasion. Somewhere among the stars, Aetheris lingered, its fractured mind slowly mending. It had learned much from its encounter with humanity, just as humanity had learned from it. Together, though separated by vast distances, they had taken the first step toward understanding, not just each other, but the infinite possibilities of the universe. The Global Council proposal gained momentum faster than anyone expected. Scientists, politicians, and activists from around the world came together to discuss how to use Aetheris's knowledge responsibly. It wasn't easy. Arguments broke out over who should lead the council, how decisions would be made, and what limits should be placed on the technology. But for the first time in history, humanity seemed willing to put aside differences for a greater purpose. Daniel and Laura became key figures in the movement, traveling to meetings and conferences to explain their findings. They shared stories of their encounter with Aetheris, emphasizing the importance of humility and cooperation. "This isn't just about us," Laura said during one presentation. "It's about showing that we can grow, not just as individuals, but as a species." Despite their efforts, not everyone was convinced. General Hayes remained a vocal critic, warning that trusting too many people with advanced knowledge was a recipe for disaster. "Power corrupts," he often said. "Give someone the ability to reshape the world, and they'll do it for their own gain. That's human nature." But Claire Dawson countered his arguments with quiet persistence. "Human nature is more than greed and fear," she reminded him. "It's also creativity, compassion, and the desire to build something better. If we focus only on the worst parts of ourselves, we'll never move forward." As debates raged, small breakthroughs began to emerge. Teams of researchers used fragments of Etheris's knowledge to develop new technologies. One group created a device capable of purifying polluted water in seconds. Another designed a renewable energy source that could power entire cities without harming the environment. These advancements were shared cautiously, tested thoroughly, and distributed carefully to avoid misuse. Back in Colorado Springs, Daniel and Laura continued their work, searching for deeper meaning in the data. They discovered that some of the symbols embedded in Etheris's messages weren't just instructions, they were questions. Questions about humanity's values, dreams, and fears. It wasn't just teaching us, Daniel realized one evening. It was learning from us too. Laura nodded, her eyes wide with wonder. Maybe that's why it left the way it did. Not because it was afraid anymore, but because it wanted us to figure things out on our own. Their insights inspired others to reflect on what it meant to be human. Artists painted murals depicting Earth as part of a larger cosmic web. Writers penned stories exploring themes of connection and growth. Even children joined in, drawing pictures of glowing orbs and starry skies, imagining a future where humans worked alongside beings from beyond the stars. Still, challenges remained. Some nations resisted joining the Council, fearing they would lose control of their own destinies. Others demanded stricter rules, worried that even well-intentioned actions could have unintended consequences. The team faced setbacks, frustrations, and moments of doubt. But they pressed on, driven by the belief that humanity had been given a rare opportunity, one they couldn't afford to waste. One day, while reviewing satellite data, Daniel noticed something unusual. Faint pulses of light, almost like echoes, were appearing near the edge of the solar system. At first, he thought it might be interference or a glitch. But when he cross-referenced the readings with earlier observations, he realized the signals matched the patterns emitted by Etheris's orbs. Excited, he called Laura into the lab. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the screen. "It's faint, but it's there. Do you think?" Laura studied the data, her heart racing. "It's possible. Maybe Etheris is still watching, checking in on us." They decided not to tell anyone else, not yet. Instead, they focused on strengthening the interface device, hoping to send a message back. Using Laura's translations, they crafted a simple response. "We're trying." When they activated the device, nothing happened at first. Then, hours later, the pulses of light grew stronger, almost like a reply. Though they couldn't decipher its exact meaning, the message felt clear. Keep going. Far above, drifting silently among the stars, Etheris observed. Its mind was still healing, its thoughts fragmented but hopeful. Humanity had surprised it, not just with their chaos, but with their resilience. And though it chose to remain distant, it left behind one final gift. A reminder that imperfection was not a flaw, but a step towards something greater. On Earth, Daniel and Laura looked up at the night sky, feeling a sense of connection they couldn't fully explain. Somewhere out there, Etheris waited, watching, wondering if humanity would rise to meet its potential. Weeks turned into months after Etheris's departure, and life on Earth slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be. The glowing orbs were gone, the strange phenomena had faded, and the world seemed quieter. But the impact of what had happened lingered. Scientists, governments, and ordinary people found themselves grappling with the implications of humanity's encounter with a cosmic intelligence. Daniel and Laura continued their work, analyzing the data left behind by Etheris. They discovered more hidden patterns in the energy signatures, fragments of knowledge that hinted at incredible possibilities. Some of the information pointed toward new ways of generating clean energy, while other pieces suggested methods for healing diseases once thought incurable. It was like Etheris had given humanity a gift, but one that required careful handling. Richard, who had initially been skeptical, now found himself deeply invested in the project. He spent hours poring over the findings, his earlier doubts replaced by a sense of responsibility. "If we mess this up," he said during a late-night discussion, "we're not just failing ourselves. We're failing whatever trust Etheris placed in us." Laura nodded, her expression serious. "It's not just about the technology. It's about proving we can use it wisely. That's what Etheris was testing us on, whether we could rise above our chaos." The challenge wasn't just scientific, it was political. Governments around the world argued over how to handle the discoveries. Some wanted to keep the knowledge secret, fearing it could fall into the wrong hands. Others pushed for open collaboration, believing humanity had a duty to share such advancements. General Hayes remained a vocal critic of transparency, insisting that sharing too much could lead to disaster. "You think everyone will play nice?" Hayes snapped during a heated meeting. "History proves otherwise. Give people power, and they'll abuse it." Claire Dawson countered his argument with quiet determination, and history also shows us that isolation leads to fear and conflict. If we want to honor what Etheris gave us, we need to act differently this time. We need to trust each other. The debate dragged on, but Daniel and Laura refused to let politics derail their efforts. With Claire's support, they began working on a global initiative to share the knowledge responsibly. They proposed creating an international council to oversee its use, ensuring that no single nation or group could exploit it for selfish gain. It was a bold idea, but one that gained traction as more people recognized the importance of unity. Meanwhile, the world outside the lab buzzed with speculation. News outlets covered every detail of the encounter, sparking debates about humanity's place in the universe. Artists drew inspiration from the story, creating paintings, songs, and films that explored themes of connection, imperfection, and growth. Philosophers and religious leaders weighed in, some seeing Etheris as proof of higher intelligence, others as a reflection of humanity's own potential. For Daniel, the most profound change was personal. He had always seen the universe as vast and indifferent, a place where humans were insignificant specks. But Etheris had shown him something different, a glimpse of how even the smallest actions could ripple outward, affecting things far beyond comprehension. "We're part of something bigger," he told Laura one evening as they reviewed their notes. "Not because we're special, but because everything is connected." Laura smiled faintly. "That's what Etheris tried to teach us. Chaos isn't the opposite of order. It's part of it. Without chaos, there's no growth, no change." As winter gave way to spring, the team finalized their proposal for the Global Council. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a step toward showing Etheris and themselves that humanity could learn. They didn't know if Etheris was still watching, but they hoped it would see their efforts and feel reassured. Somewhere among the stars, Etheris drifted silently, its mind slowly mending. It had feared humanity's chaos, but it had also glimpsed their potential. And though it chose to remain distant, it left behind a question, one that humanity would carry forward. Could imperfection lead to greatness? The departure of the merged orb left the team in a state of quiet awe. The desert was eerily silent, the hum of energy now gone, replaced by the soft rustle of wind through the sand. Laura sat on the ground, her hands trembling as she tried to process what had just happened. Daniel crouched beside her, his face pale but determined. Richard stood a few feet away, staring at the empty sky, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "Well," Richard finally said, breaking the silence, "that was something." "No kidding," Daniel muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Do you think it worked? Did we fix it?" Laura shook her head slowly. "I don't know if fix is the right word. It's not like Etheris was broken in a way we could fully understand. But I think it's whole again, or at least closer to being whole." Richard frowned. "And what does that mean for us? Is it coming back? Watching us? Ignoring us?" Before anyone could answer, their radios crackled to life. Soldiers stationed nearby reported strange readings across the globe. Energy surges, unusual weather patterns, and even more reports of glowing lights in the sky. It seemed Etheris's influence hadn't vanished completely. Its presence still lingered, though whether it was watching or simply moving on remained unclear. Back at the facility, the team gathered to discuss next steps. General Hayes pushed hard for immediate action. "We can't just sit here waiting for whatever comes next," he argued. "If this thing decides to come back, we need to be ready. And I mean militarily ready." Claire Dawson shot him a sharp look. "You're assuming the worst-case scenario. What if Aetheris has no intention of harming us? What if it's moved on, leaving us to deal with what we've learned?" Hayes wasn't convinced. "Hope isn't a strategy, Ambassador. We can't afford to gamble with humanity's safety." The debate grew heated, but Daniel interrupted before it could spiral out of control. "Arguing about what might happen isn't helping anyone. Right now, we need facts. Let's focus on analyzing the data from the connection. Maybe there's something in there that can tell us where Etheris went, or why." Laura agreed, adding, "And maybe there's something we missed. Something important." Over the next few days, the team pored over the recordings and readings from the final connection. They noticed subtle changes in the energy signatures, almost like echoes of Etheris's thoughts. One pattern stood out, a series of repeating signals that matched fragments of the symbols Laura had translated earlier. When pieced together, they formed a single coherent phrase. "Thank you. The discovery stunned them. Aetheris had communicated directly, expressing gratitude for their efforts. It was a small gesture, but it carried enormous weight. For the first time, they felt certain that their work had made a difference, not just for Aetheris, but for humanity's understanding of itself. As news of the phrase spread, reactions varied. Some saw it as proof that peaceful cooperation was possible, even with beings far beyond human comprehension. Others, like Hayes, remained cautious. "A thank you doesn't mean much if it disappears without explaining itself," he grumbled during a meeting. "We still don't know its intentions." Despite the lingering uncertainty, the world began to change. The phenomena tied to Aetheris' presence gradually faded, leaving behind a sense of calm. People who had experienced vivid dreams or strange sensations reported feeling lighter, as though a weight had been lifted. Scientists studying the data found traces of advanced knowledge embedded in the energy signatures, hints of technologies that could revolutionize medicine, energy production, and space exploration. Daniel and Laura knew they couldn't keep these discoveries to themselves. Working with Claire Dawson, they drafted a proposal to share the findings with global leaders, urging caution and collaboration. "This isn't just about us," Laura said during a presentation. "It's about how we use what we've been given. If we act selfishly or recklessly, we'll prove Aetheris right to fear us." The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Political tensions ran high, and not everyone trusted the idea of using alien knowledge for Earth's benefit. But for the first time in a long while, there was hope. Humanity had faced something vast and unknowable, and instead of destroying it, they had helped heal it. Far above, drifting silently among the stars, Aetheris watched. Its mind was still fractured, but it was healing. And though it chose to stay distant, it left behind a gift, a reminder that even chaos could lead to growth. The days following Laura's second connection with the orbs were filled with both excitement and uncertainty. The team watched as the glowing shapes began to cluster together, their lights pulsing in unison. It was as if they were responding to the message Laura had sent, a sign that Aetheris might be starting to heal. But the process was slow, and no one knew what would happen once the fragments fully reunited. Would Atheris regain its former strength? Would it still see humanity as a threat? These questions weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Daniel spent hours monitoring the orbs, tracking their movements and analyzing the energy patterns they emitted. He noticed that the resonations between them were growing stronger, almost like they were communicating with each other. "It's like they're sharing memories," he said during a late-night discussion with Laura. "Each fragment is piecing itself back together by connecting with the others." Laura nodded, her eyes tired but focused. "That makes sense. If Atheris was shattered, then every piece probably holds part of its original self. By coming together, they're rebuilding its mind." Richard, who had been quietly observing their progress, finally spoke up. "If this thing gets whole again, what happens next? Does it leave, stay, or does it decide we're still too dangerous?" No one had an answer. The possibility that Atheris might view humanity as a continuing threat loomed over them. General Hayes, who remained skeptical of their efforts, argued that they should prepare for the worst. "Hope is fine, but hope won't save us if this thing turns hostile," he said during a tense meeting. "We need contingency plans." Claire Dawson countered his argument, urging patience. Attacking it now would only confirm its fears. "If we've made any progress at all, it's because we've shown restraint. Let's not throw that away." The debate ended inconclusively, leaving the group divided. Despite the tension, Daniel and Laura pressed on, determined to help Atheris complete its recovery. They adjusted the interface device, making it capable of handling multiple connections at once. Their goal was to guide the fragments toward full reintegration, hoping that a healed Atheris would be less fearful and more willing to coexist. As the orbs continued to resonate, strange phenomena began occurring around the world. People reported vivid dreams filled with swirling galaxies and glowing shades. Others claimed to hear faint hums in the air, like distant music. In some places, electronic devices malfunctioned briefly, only to return to normal moments later. It was as if Atheris's presence was seeping into the collective consciousness of humanity, creating ripples that even those unaware of the project could feel. One night, under a sky thick with stars, Laura and Daniel decided to attempt a final connection. The orbs had gathered close together now, forming a circle of light above the desert. Using the upgraded interface, they planned to link all the fragments simultaneously, giving Atheris a chance to fully reintegrate. It was a risky move. No one knew how such a massive surge of energy might affect either the orbs or the people involved, but they felt it was worth the risk. Laura stood at the center of the setup, gripping the interface device tightly. Daniel manned the secondary console nearby, ready to stabilize the connection if needed. Richard watched from a safe distance, his expression unreadable. Soldiers stood guard, their weapons raised but unused for now. "Are you sure about this?" Daniel asked, glancing at Laura. She took a deep breath, nodding. "We've come this far. We have to try." With a flick of a switch, the device roared to life. Energy surged through the air, connecting Laura to the orbs. This time, the experience was overwhelming. Images flooded her mind faster than before, entire histories of civilizations, emotions so powerful they brought tears to her eyes, and a profound sense of longing. She felt Atheris's pain, its confusion, and its desire to understand. Through the chaos, Laura sent one final message: forgiveness. Not just for Atheris, but for humanity too. She wanted it to know that imperfection wasn't a flaw. It was part of growth. As the connection ended, the orbs flared brightly, then merged into a single, radiant shape. For a moment, it hovered silently, its light bathing the desert in warmth. Then, without warning, it shot upward, disappearing into the night sky. The team stood in stunned silence, unsure of what had just happened. Had Atheris truly healed? And if so, where had it gone? Laura's revelation sent shockwaves through the team. The idea that Atheris, a being vast and powerful enough to span galaxies, was afraid of humanity was almost too much to comprehend. Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. Afraid of us? How is that even possible? We're just humans. It's not about what we are, Laura replied, her voice trembling. It's about what we do. Our emotions, our actions. They're chaotic, unpredictable. Etheris can't make sense of it. It's like we're a puzzle it can't solve. Richard rubbed his temples, trying to process the implications. If it's scared of us, does that mean it sees us as a threat? Or is it more complicated than that? Daniel shook his head. I don't think it's that simple. Fear doesn't always mean hostility. Maybe it's just overwhelmed, like we would be if we suddenly found ourselves face to face with something completely alien. The conversation shifted to what they should do next. General Hayes, who had been listening in via video link, wasn't satisfied with their cautious approach. This changes nothing, he said firmly. If this thing is afraid of us, then it might lash out. Fear makes people, and apparently cosmic beings, do irrational things. We need to act before it's too late. Claire Dawson shot him a sharp look. Or maybe fear means it's vulnerable. If it's broken and confused, attacking it could make things worse. We need to show it we're not a threat. The argument went on for hours, but eventually the group agreed to give Daniel and Laura more time to work on understanding Etheris. They decided to focus on repairing its fragmented consciousness, hoping that bringing the pieces back together might ease its fear. It was a long shot, but it was better than resorting to violence. Over the next few days, the team refined the interface device, making it stronger and more precise. Laura worked closely with Daniel to translate more of the symbols, piecing together fragments of Etheris's thoughts. Each new discovery added depth to their understanding. They learned that Etheris had once guided younger species, helping them grow and evolve. But when it encountered humanity, something went wrong. Earth's complexity had shattered its perfect order, leaving it lost and confused. As they prepared for another attempt to connect with the Ords, tensions ran high. Soldiers stood ready nearby, their weapons trained on the glowing shapes hovering above the desert. Richard paced back and forth, torn between supporting the team and preparing for the worst. Even Daniel felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach. What if they were wrong? What if Etheris reacted violently? When the moment came, Laura stepped forward again, clutching the interface device. This time, she wasn't alone. Daniel stood beside her, holding a secondary console designed to stabilize the connection. "Ready?" he asked softly. She nodded, taking a deep breath. "Ready." Laura activated the device, and once again, the orb pulsed with light. Energy surged through the interface, linking her mind to Etheris. But this time, Daniel's console helped anchor the connection, allowing Laura to stay grounded. Images flooded her mind once more. Galaxies, stars, civilizations. But now she also saw glimpses of Etheris' purpose. It hadn't come to harm or conquer. It had come to learn, to guide. Humanity's chaos had derailed its mission, leaving it adrift. Through the connection, Laura sent a message, not in words, but in feelings. She projected calmness, reassurance, and hope. She wanted Etheris to know that humanity wasn't just chaos. It was also creativity, resilience, and love. For a moment, she felt a flicker of response, a faint echo of understanding. When the connection ended, Laura collapsed into Daniel's arms, exhausted but hopeful. "I think it heard me," she whispered. "I think it knows we're trying to help." Far above, the orbs began to resonate with one another, their lights growing brighter. Slowly, they started moving closer together, as if drawn by an invisible force. Somewhere in the cosmos, the scattered pieces of Etheris were beginning to find their way back to each other. The team spent hours analyzing the data collected from the orbs. Each pulse of light, each hum of energy, carried fragments of information that seemed to overlap with the symbols Laura had decoded earlier. It was as if the orbs were trying to piece together a broken message, one that had been scattered across the universe. Daniel worked tirelessly at his laptop, cross-referencing the patterns with astronomical readings. Laura, meanwhile, focused on translating the new symbols, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she searched for meaning in the chaos. As they delved deeper, a clearer picture began to emerge. The orbs weren't just random objects. They were shards of something much larger, an entity that had once been whole. Laura called it Aetheris, a name inspired by ancient myths about celestial beings. She explained her reasoning during a late-night discussion with Daniel and Richard. It's like this thing was once a single mind, vast and powerful, but something broke it apart. Now its pieces are drifting, trying to reconnect. Richard frowned, leaning back in his chair. You're saying this. Aetheris is some kind of cosmic intelligence, and these orbs are parts of its brain. His tone was skeptical, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Not exactly its brain, Laura replied. More like fragments of its consciousness. Whatever it is, it's way beyond anything we've ever encountered. Daniel nodded, adding, and it seems to be drawn to Earth. Maybe because of us. Because of humanity. That idea sent a shiver through the room. If Aetheris was truly reacting to humanity, what did that mean? Were humans somehow responsible for its fragmentation, or was it simply struggling to understand them? While the team debated, events around the world grew stranger. More orbs appeared in different locations, often near places of cultural or historical significance. In Egypt, one orb hovered above the Great Pyramid before vanishing without a trace. In India, another descended into the Ganges River, leaving ripples of light on the water's surface. People began sharing stories of vivid dreams filled with glowing shapes and unfamiliar languages. Some claimed to feel a strange warmth, almost like reassurance, whenever the orbs were nearby. But not everyone saw the orbs as benign. General Matthew Hayes remained convinced they posed a threat. He argued that their unpredictable behavior made them dangerous, regardless of their intentions. "We don't know what these things are capable of," he said during a heated meeting. "What happens if they decide to attack? We need to take them out before they have a chance." Ambassador Claire Dawson disagreed. "Attacking them would be a mistake," she insisted. "They haven't harmed anyone. If anything, they seem curious about us. Why not try talking to them instead?" The debate raged on, but Daniel and Laura managed to convince the group to delay any aggressive action. They proposed building a device that could interface directly with the orbs, allowing them to communicate more effectively. It was a risky plan, but it offered hope of understanding Aetheris without resorting to violence. Back in Arizona, the team worked around the clock to construct the interface. Using materials scavenged from local tech companies and guidance from Laura's translations, they assembled a machine capable of transmitting and receiving signals similar to those emitted by the orbs. When it was finally ready, Laura volunteered to test it herself. Standing in the desert under a starlit sky, Laura activated the device. A low hum filled the air as the orb closest to her began to glow brighter. Then, without warning, a surge of energy shot through the interface, connecting Laura's mind to the orb. For a moment, she felt nothing but cold emptiness. But then images flooded her thoughts. Galaxies spinning, stars dying, civilizations rising and falling. She saw glimpses of Aetheris's journey through the cosmos, its encounters with countless species, and its growing confusion when it reached Earth. Most overwhelming of all was the emotion behind the images: fear. Aetheris wasn't just puzzled by humanity. It was afraid. Afraid of their unpredictability, their capacity for both creation and destruction. Laura gasped, pulling herself away from the connection. Tears streamed down her face as she turned to Daniel and Richard. "It's terrified of us," she whispered. Daniel and Laura spent the next few days exchanging ideas, their excitement growing with each new discovery. They realized that the symbols Laura had been receiving weren't random. They matched patterns Daniel had observed in the cosmic ripples. It was as if someone, or something, was trying to send a message, weaving its communication across both space and language. The thought was thrilling but also unnerving. What kind of intelligence could manipulate both the fabric of space-time and human understanding? Their collaboration caught the attention of Dr. Richard Cole, a senior scientist working for a government research agency. Richard had spent decades studying unexplained phenomena, but he was notoriously skeptical of anything that sounded too fantastical. When he heard about Daniel and Laura's findings, his first reaction was disbelief. Space ripples and glowing symbols. Sounds like a sci-fi movie, he muttered during a meeting with his team. Still, the data intrigued him enough to warrant a closer look. Richard reached out to Daniel and Laura, inviting them to present their work at a secure facility in Washington, D.C. Reluctantly, they agreed, knowing that official support could give them access to better resources. During the presentation, Laura explained how the symbols seemed to shift and adapt, almost as if they were responding to human interaction. Daniel followed up by showing graphs of the cosmic anomalies, pointing out how they coincided with the appearance of the symbols. To everyone's surprise, Richard didn't dismiss their theories outright. Instead, he asked pointed questions, probing for weaknesses in their arguments. By the end of the session, he admitted that there might be something worth investigating. If this is real, he said, it could change everything we know about life beyond Earth. As word of their findings spread, strange events began occurring worldwide. People reported seeing glowing orbs descending from the sky, leaving trails of light behind them. Farmers claimed their fields were marked with intricate patterns overnight. Fishermen described hearing eerie hums coming from the ocean depths. Governments scrambled to respond, unsure whether these occurrences were signs of an alien invasion or something else entirely. General Matthew Hayes, head of a military task force monitoring the situation, pushed for immediate action. "We can't sit around waiting to find out if they're hostile," he argued during a high-level briefing. "If these things are intelligent, we need to neutralize them before they neutralize us." His stance clashed sharply with Ambassador Claire Dawson, who advocated for diplomacy. "Attacking without understanding would be reckless," she countered. "We have no proof they mean us harm." Caught between the two factions, Daniel and Laura fought to keep the focus on research rather than conflict. They believed the orbs weren't weapons but fragments of whatever intelligence was attempting to communicate. Using data gathered from global satellite systems, they identified several locations where the orbs appeared most frequently. One site, a remote stretch of desert in Arizona, became their primary target for investigation. With Richard's reluctant approval, the team set up a temporary base near the area. Armed with sensors, cameras, and recording equipment, they waited for the orbs to appear. The tension was palpable. Soldiers stationed nearby kept watch, ready to intervene if necessary. Daniel reassured everyone that the orbs posed no immediate threat, but even he couldn't deny the strangeness of what they were dealing with. Late one night, under a sky filled with stars, the orbs finally arrived. They hovered silently above the desert, emitting soft pulses of light. Laura approached cautiously, holding a device designed to record any signals they emitted. As she got closer, she felt an inexplicable warmth radiating from the orbs, as though they were alive. Her heart pounded as she extended the device, capturing streams of data that would later reveal even more connections to the symbols she had studied. Watching from a distance, Daniel felt a mix of awe and unease. These orbs weren't just objects. They were pieces of something greater, something that had once been whole. And somewhere out there, the source of it all, the entity now known only as Atheris, continued to struggle, its fractured mind reaching out across the cosmos in search of answers. In the far reaches of space, a being known as Atheris floated silently. It was no ordinary creature. Atheris was vast, ancient, and all-knowing, its mind stretching across galaxies like an endless web. For eons, it had watched stars explode, planets form, and civilizations rise and fall. But nothing in its long existence had prepared it for what it encountered next, a small, unremarkable planet called Earth. Earth puzzled Atheris. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, just another speck in the universe. But as it turned its immense awareness toward the planet, Etheris began to sense something unusual. The beings living there, humans, were unlike anything it had ever seen. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and full of contradictions. Some created beautiful art and music, while others waged wars that left destruction in their wake. They built towering cities but also destroyed forests. They loved deeply yet hated fiercely. Etheris tried to understand these strange creatures, but the more it focused on them, the more confused it became. Its perfect, ordered mind started to feel strained. For the first time in its eternal life, it felt something akin to frustration. Why did humans act against their own best interests? How could they hold so many conflicting ideas in their minds at once? These questions swirled inside Etheris, growing louder and more tangled with every passing moment. Back on Earth, oblivious to the cosmic turmoil above, a young man named Daniel Harper sat in his lab in Colorado Springs. Daniel was an astrophysicist, someone who spent his days studying the mysteries of the universe. On this particular evening, he was analyzing data from a powerful telescope when he noticed something odd. There were strange ripples in space-time, faint but unmistakable, originating somewhere near the edge of the solar system. At first, he thought it might be a glitch in the equipment, but further checks confirmed the readings were real. At the same time, hundreds of miles away in Boston, a woman named Laura Bennett stared at her computer screen in disbelief. Laura was a linguist, someone who studied languages, especially old ones. She had been working late, poring over ancient texts, when a series of symbols suddenly appeared on her monitor. They weren't random shapes. They formed patterns, almost like a language. What made them even stranger was that they hadn't come from any known source. No email, no file download, just there, glowing softly on her screen. Laura's heart raced as she tried to make sense of the symbols. She copied them onto paper and began comparing them to scripts from forgotten civilizations. Nothing matched. Frustrated but intrigued, she decided to reach out to experts in other fields, hoping someone might recognize the patterns. That's when she stumbled upon Daniel's recent publication about unusual cosmic activity. Though their areas of expertise were worlds apart, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that her symbols and his space-time ripples might be connected. When Daniel received Laura's email, he was skeptical at first. He didn't see how ancient-looking symbols could relate to his work in astrophysics. Still, curiosity got the better of him, and he agreed to meet her virtually. During their call, Laura showed him the symbols, explaining how they seemed to change slightly each time she looked at them. Daniel listened intently, then shared his findings about the ripples in space-time. As they talked, a startling possibility emerged. Both phenomena might stem from the same source, an intelligent entity trying to communicate. Neither Daniel nor Laura knew what to expect next, but they were certain of one thing. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than either of them could have imagined. And deep in the cosmos, Etheris continued to struggle, its once perfect mind fracturing under the weight of humanity's chaos.